everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am going to share with you the romance novels that I read during August. This was my first time reading romance. This is part of a series that I'm doing called I've Never Read, where I am trying new genres, authors, types of books that I've just never tried before. So romance was something that I've always just not had an interest in, but as a firm believer that there are just good and bad books, there are no good and bad genres, I thought, I should give this genre a chance and see if there are any gems in there I can find. So overall, I would say that it was an enjoyable experience, a lot of fun. I definitely did find a couple things that I liked, but I think this was definitely a mixed bag for me. I don't think romance is going to be a genre that I will really go to necessarily, but it's not something I'm going to discount going forward. And I think it's just not going to be off the table, but I am going to be maybe selective in terms of what type of romance I would go to in the future. And this is not anything surprising because romance has never been something that I've been interested in picking up previously, but the romance elements for the most part were the parts of the books that interested me the least, and the other elements of the books for the most part are what drew me in. So I tended to like the non-romance parts of the books better, with one exception, and that was in the first book that I read, which was Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I loved this book. It was so much fun, but also there were more tender or heart-tugging moments. I just think it was really well balanced. And the narrator, I listened to this on audio, and the narrator, she was friggin' fantastic. I can't remember her name, and I didn't write it down, so I will insert it somewhere here and also in the box below with the information where I link all the book information. And she really did an excellent job narrating this. This is about our main character, Chloe Brown, who is one of those maybe high-strung type A personality. She likes what she likes. She's kind of given up on a love life. She's been burned in the past, and she lives with chronic illness, which is featured in the book in really a smart way. It is relevant, or it's talked about when relevant or when it needs to be addressed or when it has to do with, something important. But it's not brought up all the time, and it's not addressed when it's not relevant. So I thought that was handled really well, and it was nice to see representation of a plus-sized woman living with a disability, with a chronic illness. She's a sufferer of chronic pain and fatigue, but it's not her entire being, and her life doesn't revolve around it 24/7. So I just thought that was handled really, really well. And the story follows Chloe as this type A go-getter person, but she has she's not very so we say spontaneous or adventurous person, and she has a near-death experience where she just comes to realize I haven't really done much by way of exciting things in my life. So she comes up with this list to get a life, and she ends up basically convincing the not the landlord, but the superintendent, building superintendent where she lives, to help her check the items off this list as someone who he seems a bit more adventurous than her. And there's a budding romance, and I was all for it. This was the only book, like I mentioned, where I really was invested in the romance. I wanted them to get together so badly. And I think I figured out why the romance worked for me in this book and maybe not the others. So I'll get to the other books shortly, but they were mostly YA contemporaries. And I was more invested in the coming of age elements in those books, and I was more interested in their other relationships, like relationships with their parents and trying to gain independence and those types of things. Whereas the protagonists in this book were old. Like, I don't know if it ever mentioned their age, but I feel like they were probably like early 30s. So they were a little bit older. They had, or at least in Chloe's case, like she had her life together. She knew who she was. She knew what she wanted. She had her career down. Like, she had her own business and she was good at it. She was good at what she did. And she had like a loving and supportive family. So she had her life together in every other aspect, except romance was something that, although she felt like she didn't need it to complete herself, which she didn't. And I think, again, the book handled that really well. But it was something that maybe she did want, but just had convinced herself she didn't because she had been burned in the past. So I think I was more invested in the romance because not everything hinged on it. Like, Chloe was going to be okay even if she didn't have someone in her life, but it was a nice perk, if I can put it that way. So yeah, so I really was invested in the romance. One thing I will say about this book, which I didn't think I would like, because I'm not, a lot of times like romantic things in books or in movies for that matter will make me cringe a little bit. This book is raunchy. I'm sure I've inserted a picture somewhere, but based on the cover is like so cute and endearing. And I don't think it doesn't fit the story. I think it does. But just based on that cutesy little cartoony cover, I did not expect the level of raunch in this book. It's like, the sex scenes are very detailed, shall we say. And that is not something I thought I would like, but I liked it. So moving on. So then after that really strong start, I struggled for a little while. So I started another book, which I saw it listed under romance, but I would call it more of like an adventure type book with a romantic element, and that was The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. So I got about halfway through this and I ended up DNFing it. Not because of the book. I actually was quite enjoying it. It was probably on its way to be about a 3-star. It's kind of like a road trip adventure set in the 1700s. It was I would call it a YA. And it featured this kind of like playboy type character who's very privileged. And he has like one last hurrah before he is going to be forced to take over his father's business and kind of like settle down. And so he goes on this tour of Europe with his best friend and his little sister, and he is secretly in love with his best friend, who is male. So it features like a gay crush, and the protagonist is also he's bisexual. So I was very interested in the representation in this novel, and it really had me gripped in the story. I was enjoying it. But then as I went online to look into the author, because I wanted to know whether it was own voices or not. And as I was researching the author, I found some like problematic things that I tried to get back into the book, but I just couldn't shake it, and it kind of just tainted the book for me, and I found myself not able to finish it. Maybe for some people this isn't like anything totally horrendous, but I don't know, it just seemed that if she had put any effort to make a proper apology, that I probably would have been fine with it, but I couldn't find anything anywhere that indicated that she made a sincere apology. But essentially the author, Mackenzi Lee, she also, she works at a bookstore somewhere. She was signing books that she hadn't authored, and I think she was doing it to like be cute or funny. She'd like do little doodles and like write something like that she thought was witty or quippy, like, oh, I didn't write this, but it's great or whatever, and like signed her name. And the people buying the books knew she worked there and requested it. But I think for the most part, they were authors. The authors were whose books she was signing were people of color. Maybe not all of them, but I think for the most part they were. And they had voiced, or at least a few of them, or a couple of them, had voiced that they didn't appreciate that, like a white author signing the inside cover, like the first page of their books. She wasn't leaving anywhere for the actual author to sign. So maybe it would have been one thing if she kind of put in the corner like, oh my God, I love this book, I hope you love it too, and like signed her name, but left like the space for the author to sign their book if that's something that the buyer of the book maybe would be able to do in the future. But she didn't. Like, she just took up the whole front page, and so it very much had this mark of like a white person just like plastering their name on the front cover and leaving no room for the person of color who had actually authored the book. So like that kind of, it was just all very unfortunate. And I think the main point here is that regardless of how I feel about it, or if I thought it was a big deal or not, the authors of those books made it known how it was making them feel and the problems in doing this. And she didn't really, as far as I can tell, like make a decent apology or say like, oh, hey, like I meant it in this way, but I can totally see where you're coming from, and I'm so sorry, I didn't realize how that was coming across, and I'm going to stop doing that now. Like there was no real accountability taking there. So it just kind of like left a taste in my mouth where I was like, oh, like I don't want to finish this book now. So take that how you want to. And then the next book I started, I also ended up DNFing, and that was Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiromi Kawakami. And I don't think this has anything to do with the book. I think I was just in a weird headspace, and I just wasn't into that particular book at that particular moment. I was looking to read a romance, and so this follows a young woman, I think maybe, I think more so maybe in her 30s at this point. But she ends up meeting an old teacher of hers from high school, and they start a little friendship, and I think further along in the romance that might develop into something more, but I didn't get that far. And it was just like a wrong time type of book. I think I was looking for something a little more specifically romance, and this seemed to be more like maybe character study and like a study of like this developing relationship, but like I didn't really feel the romance, and I just wasn't into that particular story. So that was a DNF, but I don't think it was a never return to. I think that's something I may enjoy in the future, but wasn't feeling it at that time. Strong start, and then I kind of floundered for a while, but I finally finished a book, and that was Let's Talk About Love by Claire Kann, or Claire Kann. I gave this 2 stars, and I think this wasn't a bad book. I think it was one of those, this just isn't quite for me type books. So this is a YA romance, and it centers around Alice, who is asexual. So she does feel attraction to people, but it's, she appreciates things that are cute. So she does notice when people are attractive, but she doesn't have any sexual desire or sexual attraction. But she does have romantic attraction to people. And honestly, I just thought that was kind of a breath of fresh air and just a really interesting way to do a romance novel where you're focused specifically on romance and not about sex at all. And I tried to find out whether this was own voices, but I couldn't find anything. So I don't know if the author is also asexual, or maybe she knows people who are, maybe she did a lot of research. I am not, so I can't really comment as to the accuracy maybe of the representation. I thought it was really well done, but I also couldn't find any own voices reviews out there. But I did think it was kind of refreshing to see it. And I think if you're someone who enjoys romance or romantic stories, but really is not into like the raunchy or sexy side, then this would definitely be for you. So in the story, Alice, she's been dumped by her girlfriend, and she's finishing up like her freshman year of college and working through the summer, and just has decided, I'm done with love. No one accepts me because I'm asexual, and the only thing that matters with the romantic partner she's had, at least, is sex, and I'm just not into it, and I'm just gonna be done with this. But then of course she meets someone through her job who she thinks is really cute, and she's trying not to think about him and trying not to have a romantic relationship because she doesn't want to get disappointed or heartbroken because she doesn't have any sexual attraction. And she also is struggling with her relationship with her friends, who is kind of that typical like growing apart during college type of experience. And her two best friends are a couple, and so she feels like a third wheel. And she also has some conflict with her family, where her parents have a certain idea of what her life should look like. They want her to go to law school, and that's just not what she wants to do. She doesn't know what she wants to do, but she knows she does not want to be a lawyer. So I found personally the storyline with her trying to figure out where she stands with her friends and trying to like navigate what she wants for herself versus what her parents want and not wanting to let them down. I found that really compelling. But I wasn't as drawn into the romance, but I think that's just maybe my personal taste. Also, the reason I gave this only 2 stars was like the writing style wasn't really my thing. I just found the writing style a bit bland. I like things that are a bit more like lyrical or poetic or descriptive in some way. And I found this just a little bit too, well, bland, like generic, I guess. And there was like a lot of pop culture references that I got, but I feel like will be dated really quickly. And I just didn't feel like they added anything. And I just got tired of the constant pop culture reference throughout this. So it got a little bit grating after a while. But yeah, it was a fine story. I just think it wasn't executed, like the writing wasn't executed in a way that I personally enjoy. So now coming to the last book that I read, we're going to end with another 4-star book, and that was Loveboat Taipei by Abigail Hin Wen. So this one follows, I believe she's 18. She's just graduating high school. She's applying to different universities. Ever, that's her name. Our main character is Ever. And her parents are, I can't remember if they're from Taiwan or they're from China, but they are immigrants. They've sacrificed a lot. Her father was a doctor and had to give that up when he moved to the United States because they weren't going to recognize his certification or something. So basically they've been training Ever throughout her whole life to become a doctor. That is the wish for their wish for their child. She's been doing all the pre-med stuff she's supposed to be doing, trying to get good grades, but her heart is not in that. She doesn't want to be a doctor, but she doesn't want to disappoint her parents. Her heart is in dance. She loves dancing, but her parents don't think that that's a wise career choice. And what ends up happening, so this is the summer before she's set to go to university, they sign her up for this sort of like a summer camp for like high school, like early college age kids. Basically, children of Chinese parents to go to Taiwan. And it's basically kind of like summer camp, so kind of like summer school. So she would be taking like Mandarin classes, and you basically sign up for like different electives. And there's also like field trips, and these are real things that happen, by the way. So I think there was an author's note, and I also looked this up, but there are real programs like this for children of like Chinese immigrants, or like basically Chinese American teens can go to these programs. And so she goes, and these programs are, or at least in the book, I don't know if in real life, but in the book, the program is called like Qian Tan, but all the students there call it Loveboat because there's a lot of like hookups, like romances that happen. And so she goes on this program. She does not want to go. Her parents sent her against her will. And it's about her, it's a coming of age story. It's about her coming out of her shell, learning about what she wants in life. And that is not to be a doctor, but like struggling because she also through this program gets to appreciate her parents and their sacrifices more. So she even feels a stronger pull to make them proud and to honor the sacrifices they've made while staying true to herself. And that's what I love. So there's like a love triangle and other things. And I think that was more interesting maybe in some of the other novels. So I didn't hate the romantic elements in this by any means, but I still was more invested in her own self-reflection and discovering who she is and what she wants in life, and how she was going to balance what she wanted to do with her increased desire to do right by her parents, and her understanding them better and like getting where they come from. I don't mean like geographically, I mean like understanding why they are the way they are and why med school is so important to them. And it was just really lovely. I love the family dynamics of it. And the writing style in this one, I found suited my tastes a little bit better. It was a lot more descriptive. I wouldn't exactly call it poetic, but it was very rich, and it really made me want to visit Taiwan, honestly. It just painted this beautiful picture of like the country and the people. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. And this was something I just picked up because it was available as an ebook through my library. And I was like, oh, that's a romance. Like, I'll read it. And yeah, and I ended up really enjoying it. Those were the books I read and DNF'd as part of reading romance for the first time. Please let me know what your favorite romance is, and I might pick a few up in the future. Thanks so much everyone for watching. I hope you're all doing well, and we'll talk soon. Take care. Bye.